Objective. After listening to this module, you'll be able to describe the connection between stress and communication. Communication skills. When companies go overseas and convert from English to the international market or vice versa, it can be downright hilarious. For example, Electrolux, which is a Scandinavian vacuum manufacturer, used the following in an American ad campaign: "Nothing sucks like Electrolux." Needless to say, it was pulled after 2 days. In Taiwan, the translation of the Pepsi slogan, "Come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation," came out. Pepsi will bring your ancestors back from the dead. In Chinese, the Kentucky Fried Chicken slogan, "Finger licking good," translated as "Eat your fingers off." When General Motors introduced the Chevy Nova in South America, it was unaware that Nova means it won't go in Spanish. After the company figured out why it wasn't selling, the team changed the name to Caribe for its Spanish language markets. Miscommunication can be a big source of stress. What percent of the average person's waking day is spent communicating in some form? A quarter, a third, a half, or 3/4? The average person spends 3/4 or roughly 75% of his or her waking day communicating in some way. So over a lifetime, communicating with others takes up a huge portion of our lives. Yet how many of us have received some type of education or training of how to effectively communicate and how to effectively resolve conflict? As I mentioned in a previous lesson, in many cases, we learn stress management skills in general from our parents. Also, we learn communication skills from our parents. In fact, poor communication skills, especially ineffective conflict resolution skills, are often handed down from generation to generation. Our patterns of communication are not just influenced by our parents or caregivers when we were children, but also by our culture in general. It's thought that Americans typically tend to be indirect compared to other countries. Obviously, there are differences in communication throughout the different regions of the U.S. For example, those on the East Coast may be more direct than those on the West Coast. But generally speaking, it's thought that Americans need to be more direct. Miscommunication results when people, even within the same culture, are indirect or when they're too direct. We've all grown up in different homes with different families, with different ways of communicating and different ways of resolving conflict, which often results in miscommunications, which often results in stress. The importance of learning and practicing good communication skills is illustrated by the fact that lack of effective conflict resolution skills is cited as the most common reason for violence and divorce. Results of one study indicate that 1 out of every 5 messages you communicate is not completely or accurately understood, even if you're a good communicator. On a nuclear submarine, there's 0 tolerance for mistakes. As a result, every instruction that the captain gives is repeated verbatim. Although we don't live on a nuclear submarine and risk catastrophic consequences if we don't communicate effectively, some pretty big problems can result when we don't communicate and or receive messages accurately. Nonverbal communication. It's thought that 90% of communication is nonverbal. Studies have shown that when a contradiction occurs between verbal and nonverbal messages, people are more inclined to believe nonverbal cues. Nonverbal communication wins every time. For example, if you ask someone, "How are you?" and the other person says, "Fine," in a rough, abrasive tone, you're probably not going to believe the person is fine. Verbal communication refers only to the actual words spoken, but nonverbal communication includes the following. Touch. Touch refers to any type of physical contact, such as touching someone's arm as you express concern for him or her. Adapters. Adapters refer to body language, such as crossing your arms. Regulators refer to body movements used to regulate or manipulate conversation, such as eye movements, head movements, shifting your weight from foot to foot. Affect displays refer to facial expressions and may overlap to an extent with regulators. Paralanguage refers to the pitch, tone, and volume of your voice and the rate at which you speak. Of these 5 types of nonverbal communication, paralanguage is perhaps the most influential because more than any other types of nonverbal communication, it can easily cause offense and can be a significant source of stress when it comes to communication. Have you ever been offended by someone not because of what they said, but how they said it. The very same words can have very different meanings. For example, think of how many different ways the phrase, "I'm going to go to the store," can be said. You can express anger, excitement, depression, etc. by saying the exact same words. That's paralanguage. Someone once recommended to always keep your words soft and sweet, just in case you have to eat them. Listening skills. In addition to effective verbal and nonverbal communication skills, lack of effective listening skills can cause misunderstanding and be a source of stress. It's thought that the average person has terrible listening skills. Most of us are thinking of what we're going to say back to the person who is talking to us, which impedes our ability to listen. Here's a list of just a few recommendations for improving your listening skills. Assume the role of the listener. See it as a role. You are not the speaker, you are the listener. Your job is to listen. Maintain eye contact. Have you ever tried to talk to someone who's looking off in the distance or over your shoulder? It's frustrating. Avoid prejudice. Be careful of forming opinions and judgments about what the person is saying. Just listen. Use minimal encouragers. This refers to really, Have you ever talked to someone on the phone and you haven't heard anything in a while, so in the middle of your sentence you ask, "Are you there?" Be prepared to paraphrase. Listen to someone as if you're going to paraphrase what they said when they're done talking. It's amazing how much better you listen. Key points. We're going to spend a lot of our life communicating with others. Miscommunication is a significant source of stress for many people. Nonverbal communication is a big part of communication. Listening skills often get overlooked but are very important in the communication process. And that's it.